I have been perceived by some people as a political superintendent. I mean, I've been called that because I have worked with politicians, because I don't see it as something that you don't do. There was just a cloud of kind of negativity over the district. Sometimes people in leadership positions in town saying, why don't you just shut down the district? And I don't think New London is necessarily more political than other places, although it has that reputation, certainly. I knew it was a risk. I absolutely knew that it was a risk, and it was a risk I was willing to take. That level of disruption, distraction, drama has been a little too much, and I think it's a distraction that isn't worth it. You know, we're always going to be a more diverse school system than school systems around here. We're always going to have a higher percentage of kids that are economically disadvantaged. I don't think that makes for a bad system. That makes for a different kind of system, but I wouldn't characterize that as bad and a system where people are more affluent as good. And I think that from the school districts, from the vantage point of being in the school district, you really see the diversity of New London in a way that a lot of people don't. I certainly could have envisioned staying here much longer because there's so many projects that I'm working on that I'm very interested in and I think are going to really flourish. Well, I'm very grateful, really, for having had the chance to work here, to be embraced by the community. In spite of what some people might feel, actually most people have been extremely warm and open to my work here and have given me help and support, and I really appreciate that. Living here has been very special, as you know. It's a special place to live, and I've enjoyed it. So I would just say thank you for people for bringing me here, number one, and for supporting me during my time here. And my wife as well has been very comfortable and embraced in terms of the community. And as I think my daughter got married here. I mean, we've really become part of the community and enjoyed that very much. Well, certainly working on the projects that we have going, which include getting the magnet elementary schools up and running. I mean, that's a project that it will be ongoing, but it will require a lot of attention and focus for the new person that comes on board following me. And then working with the new principal at the high school, that's going to require a lot of support. Tommy Thompson is going to be very good, but he's new, and so that will be an aspect of the work that's very important. And then the continuing work of making sure that we are reaching out to and delivering literacy education in a way that makes sense for kids that sometimes either they don't speak English at home or they have some disadvantages in terms of how they acquire academic English, and that's one of the biggest challenges in any urban district. I mean, that's New London, but that's, you name any city and that's on the top of the agenda. I think there have been slow but steady gains, and the fact that we have and been recognized by the state for this have increased our CMT scores. I don't want to limit gains just to CMTs, but I think that that's a fair measuring stick for us to start with, right? I mean, that is important. So the fact that we've seen that, the fact that we've seen our writing scores, as you know, at the high school last year, increase by double digits. I think those are statistically significant, but for me the real significance will be when New London students are scoring on par with the state average, and that will be the goal, and we have not achieved that yet, in all honesty, but I think we've set a foundation there for having the work done in a way that allows students to achieve, meaning teachers are working together, teachers are working on delivering instruction in a way that is related to data that's related to student work. So for instance, rather than just like teach the class, here's the worksheet, here's the book, we actually look at each student's past record, look at their strengths, look at their weaknesses, and tailor instruction to that. Teachers working together look at it together. So it's no longer a solo practitioner gig. It's now a group thing where teachers work together, look at student trends, talk about it with each other, and develop units and lesson plans around what student strengths and weaknesses are. We think that's going to pay off, and we think we've started to see that. That's why we have that trajectory of achievement. I knew it was a risk. I absolutely knew that it was a risk, and it was a risk I was willing to take. You know, I sincerely believe that when considering the pros and cons, that his ability to motivate kids to be, you know, good players and students, more importantly from my point of view, and to generate some public support that would outweigh anything else. Over time, I have come to believe that it was a risk not worth taking. No, I regret that it has taken up so much time, not just my own time, but the time of other people in the district that have had to spend a lot of time on this. It's been something that's been a distraction, and not just the most recent thing, but over the last several years, that level of disruption, distraction, drama has been a little too much, and I think it's a distraction that isn't worth it. Well, I think, you know, obviously that I have a mixed record in that regard, right? But yes, I think it has, to the extent that there's a lot more support now. You see, and there's more sports available. So, for instance, we didn't have girls volleyball. Now we do. You know, we didn't have a girls locker room even in the area of this. Yep, in the school. Now we do. Yeah, we had sort of we didn't really have a team room where people like the boys have, where they could meet. We didn't have some of the things that we've added now, like you know, the fencing and things like that. As you know, our swim team is on a rebound, right? You know, having won for the first time in years. Our basketball team. Now, I want to make clear, I'm not claiming credit for this, but during my time here, basketball teams won state championships a couple different times, right? You know, you see the baseball teams in the state, you know, finals right now. I think the sports culture here has been, or at least the school aspect of it, because as you know, the sports culture of New London goes beyond the schools. All of the youth leagues play a big role in that too. But there is a sense of real energy around sports here. I think it's been improved. I think that the laying down of the new track, you know, at the high school has been an aspect of it. And of course, the discussions around, you know, revitalizing the whole facility there, you know, the football field, et cetera, is something that's real. Adding lights, by the way, you know, we've had now night football games. So those are all very important aspects, I think, that are good for kids. Oh, very little, actually. You know, I was not at all moved by political culture, or maybe an extension of that are commentaries in the blogs and that sort of thing. It really was a family thing. I mean, if my daughter wasn't living there with a grandchild, you know, in that vicinity, I would not be interested. I would not have gone in the other direction, for instance, you know, like towards Massachusetts or to some other Connecticut place just to, you know, to move. So that was really not a factor at all. You know, politics are the same everywhere, really. And I think that wherever I've been and wherever I go, there's going to be, you know, an insider culture. There's going to be a culture of people that feel sort of that they are the founders and more entitled group, and there's going to be outsiders that are trying to work their way into the insider group, and there's all those dynamics everywhere. And I don't think New London is necessarily more political than other places, although it has that reputation, certainly. It did. People said, oh, you know, it's the most political place in Connecticut, that sort of thing. Again, I used to live and work in Bridgeport. I was involved in political culture in Bridgeport. You know, New London is a very political place. I have been perceived by some people as a political superintendent. I mean, I've been called that because I have worked with politicians. Because I don't see it as something that you don't do. You know, the idea that you maintain a distance as if, you know, it's impure, you know, and because it's human beings making decisions. It's human beings working things out, prioritizing values and resources, and making decisions. That's politics, right? So whether you're an elected official, an appointed official, whether you're a local, person that makes commentaries on, you know, readers' comment sections of articles. I mean, those are all aspects of politics and people making decisions. So, yeah, I did not feel pressured in any way. I didn't really I didn't think about it as it would be or wouldn't be. It wasn't really sort of on my radar screen to think about it that way. I'm still, in terms of superintendent years, I'm still relatively young. So I didn't have any plan. I didn't have a plan that I was going to be here for 5 years, or, I certainly could have envisioned staying here much longer, because there's so many projects that I'm working on that I'm very interested in and I think are going to really flourish. But this was an opportunity that really, coincided with some family needs of mine, and it was something that I felt that I couldn't let opportunity knock and then hope it knocked again later. I learned the lesson of being, of being able to put up with criticism. I think that's something you get in any job, of course, right? And it's not new to me, but the level of having to be patient with people that are fighting battles from the past. I learned to develop a little more patience, because I'm sort of a fast-paced, kind of impatient type person. I know that's who I am, and so I think I developed a little more patience, and thickened up my skin a little bit. So those are lessons that I learned. Oh, yeah, lots of things. Yeah, the mix of people that live here really is fascinating and invigorating, and that's and I think that from the school districts, from the vantage point of being in the school district, you really see the diversity of New London in a way that a lot of people don't, because because I really work with almost all aspects of the society in New London. From the political leadership to people, leaders at L&M Hospital and at Connecticut College, to kids that live in the housing authority, housing. I really have a sense of New London, I think, in a way that there are other people that do, of course, but not a lot of people, because it is so kind of subdivided into smaller groups. So that's something that I've enjoyed very much, and I've enjoyed working with families from all over the world, and families that have proud traditions of African American church culture, that have invited me in, and invited me to participate with them in things, and the military piece here, the whole that's something that was new to me, really, the whole issue of having the influence of the Navy base and the Coast Guard Academy. That was something that was new, and I'll miss all that. Enjoy New London. It's a fascinating place. Don't let people try and preempt your enjoyment of it by telling you all kinds of negative things, because in fact there's a lot to enjoy. The people, chief among them, and the natural beauty, of course. It's something that should be enjoyed. I think anyone that's here ought to make an effort to breathe in the salt water air and enjoy those things, because they're here, right? So enjoy them, and to enjoy the culture. I think that I've been out a lot, out and about. I think that I've really I have. It's because it's my nature, but I have been out and enjoyed local bands, and enjoyed local restaurants, and enjoyed that stuff, and been out doing it. And I think that that's important. So if a new superintendent should relax and enjoy all those things as part of their journey. I think it has hurt New London. I think that New London, by virtue of its small size and being the seat of government in this area, and all the tax-exempt property, et cetera, has had its ability to raise resources hurt. I think that, again, it gets to the issue of defining what we mean by regionalized, but I think that if we had county school systems where kids had some level of choice among public schools, I would say that's not a bad idea, and that the county would be responsible for lifting all boats, not just New London, separate from the neighboring towns. So I think that merits some exploration. That was proposed, by the way, I believe it was in the 1980s. It was a guy named Gordon Bruno, and he proposed that basically we reduced the districts in Connecticut to just the counties, and that the resources would be shared within the counties, but also the scores and would be equally, everyone would be responsible for all of the test scores and all the student achievement in their counties. And that was an idea that would break down some of the what they call euphemistically racial isolation. Segregation is the word I would use, and that would help break down segregation. That was not warmly embraced by many of the small towns, and so that becomes the problem. That is a huge issue that most people, when they think about schools, they think about their own experience. I mean, everyone's been to school, so everyone has an opinion. Everyone remembers what it was like when they sat in the desk and looked up at the blackboard and that sort of thing. So this detail-oriented, technical, inside baseball stuff is boring. And in addition to that, we've been, I think, done a disservice by the No Child Left Behind Act, in that it creates this kind of scorecard of schools where every urban school in Connecticut ends up becoming a school in need of improvement. And so, so what it does is it compares urban districts with certain kinds of challenges with nearby suburban districts, and people say, oh, look, those are failing schools. I know that there are some wags in town that say, oh, look, when I came, there were no failing schools, and now they're failing. Well, that's because across the country, in every urban district, including in Connecticut, urban school districts are put on that list. Regrettably, they are not then given special resources to help deal with some of the factors that cause that. I think that one, having good schools is important to the economy and well-being of any municipality, and I do think it's partly the responsibility of a superintendent. It's not the priority. I mean, the priority is the well-being of students and student achievement, but it certainly would be naive for any superintendent to think that they're completely disassociated from that whole aspect of things. I think that the way Connecticut has developed is that, and that there are certain places where inexpensive housing stock exists. Those are places where people that work in low-wage jobs move because they can afford to live there. So when you look at the workers that are supporting, like the casinos and Walmart and things like that, where can they afford to live? Well, they are, someone might say segregated, but they are kind of in certain places, and New London in this area is one of those places. And then there's the definition of, is it a good school or not school? Well, to me, I define that by how much growth are kids making. If kids that are, for instance, coming from other countries, as you know, in New London we have a much higher percentage of kids that come from other countries versus districts around in this area. If they're making growth, that's a good thing, and that's a good school system. An interesting way of defining a good school system for me has come recently from my partnership with the Coast Guard Academy. We have had more, and this is something I take a lot of pride in, we have had more Coast Guard families move into New London schools than we've had in many years. And what's happened is they were asked by some of their commanding officers to come take a look. Come take a look and visit. And what they find is, and what they come, and oftentimes because there's a certain level of, hierarchical thinking, in the military, they come to see me. So if a family comes, they want to come see, me, which is fine, of course, and I welcome that. But what they say to me is, look, we've been stationed all around the country. We've been to all kinds of schools. And what I see going on in this school district, the kind of things you're asking kids to do, the kind of reading program you have, the kind of things, I'm impressed, and I'm willing to have my child or children come here to the school district. So that's been part of the maintenance of having middle-class families here, and that to me starts to contribute to the notion of what a good school system is. We're always going to be a more diverse school system than school systems around here. We're always going to have a higher percentage of kids that are economically disadvantaged. I don't think that makes for a bad system. That makes for a different kind of system, but I wouldn't characterize that as bad, and a system where people are more affluent as good. I think that there are different kinds of goods and bads, if you will, within both of those contexts. But I don't think that this notion that a school system where the majority of kids are kids of color is automatically a bad system. I think that's a faulty perception on the part of people that make that perception. Well, I think that it's how we define it. I think that the notion of choice, as a concept, is very powerful, and that when parents have a choice, and when kids have a choice where they go, but when parents, in this case, really are the decision makers, have a choice, that's very powerful, and we see that with, for instance, the Shoreline Academy. That a school that is really not significantly different from other New London schools has a huge following and an extra kind of energy and level of parent involvement because of the notion of choice. When choice is used as sort of a code word for getting out of public schools, well, then I have a different perspective on it, because I think that we need to make sure we're watching out for all kids in our society. As a society, we cannot say we're going to take the top 25% and put them over here and everybody else, sorry, but that's the way it goes. I don't think that's good for our country. I don't think it's good for New London. So it depends on how we determine, how we define choice. Vouchers for religious schools, I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's antithetical to the very notion of a public school system, and even our, the notion of what it means to separate church and state. So I don't think that's a good idea. On the other hand, I will say that since I've been in New London, I have been very friendly with the other schools in New London, visiting other schools, interacting with schools here in town, inviting all the principals to a breakfast once a year, from the Catholic schools, from the charter schools. So I have not been one that's sort of like hidden in a bunker and doesn't want to deal with other educators. I see us all really as one group. Williams School, the whole gamut. So I think that if we could recreate choice, and New London will become a choice district by my definition of choice, meaning that parents will have to choose where they're going to send their kids to school. Instead of just having a neighborhood school, they'll have to say, I want them to go to the arts magnet school. I want them to go to the science magnet school. I want them to go to the multilingual school. They'll have a choice about where they send their kids. And I think that is going to generate a little bit of engagement. That's what part of the plan is all about, actually. I think there's a place for it. I think that one, I'm not an anti-union person, so I'm not one that's going to say, aha, unions should be bashed and they are bad, because I don't think that's true. But I don't think that it's necessarily mutually exclusive to have a culture of unions where contracts are negotiated and certain rights and benefits are negotiated collectively. We have a sort of toe in the water on that through our Project Open Door, which is that AP course project, and teachers teachers that teach those courses get actually $100 for every student of theirs that passes the AP course at a level of 3 or 4 or 5, 3 or above. And the students also get a similar incentive payment. So we are experimenting in New London, which is something new, with incentive pay. I think there's a place for it. I think that the danger is how do you determine what the baseline is and what growth teachers are going to make, because we're dealing with human beings, you don't know what kind of class you're going to get every year. So you could have a couple kids with extreme special needs in your class that are great kids that you help grow, but that don't make the statewide average, for instance, in scores. So would that be something that didn't allow for that teacher to get the incentive? I mean, how it's worked out and how it's defined is very important. But the idea that it would be something on the table to discuss and experiment with, I think that's worth it. I think they've mostly helped, and that is in that they have provided a level of, they've helped to provide. They're a partner, I would say, in the professionalization of it. That without unions and some clear contractual obligations, that it could become much more personality based, and who we like and who we don't like, and somebody's cousin we hire. I mean, if there were no professional requirements, and unions have helped to establish those. And again, I say they're a partner because also the State Department of Ed has helped and local school districts have helped. We're all partners, but unions have been an important partner in that. And I think that unions have been very strong, doing what unions do best, which is collective bargaining. And I think teachers now, for the first time really ever in the history of the United States, are paid at a reasonable middle-class wage, salary. And I think that's okay. I mean, I think that they merit that. I think that the kind of education, but more so the hard work that teaching really is, does merit the kind of, middle class salaries that teachers get, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. Not getting rich, but it's a decent salary, and it should be. And you hear a lot from older teachers like me that, when I started, and literally in my case, when I started teaching, I earned $11,000 my first year. That was not a middle class wage at that time even, So I think that unions have helped that happen. In terms of bumping up wages, and that has attracted, to your point earlier about would it attract a different kind of person, that has attracted a better educated group of people, and that's a good thing. On the other hand, the hindrance that you asked about, I think that sometimes by virtue of having one size fits all in terms of contract agreements and working conditions, sometimes people that aren't working as hard as they could or don't even believe in the work anymore are protected in a way that they might not be in the private sector. Where then the issue of performance is related to job security as opposed to the more civil service perspective, which is, if you put in your time, you get to stay. I feel that that's one of the strong points of my 5 years here, in terms of increasing the enrollment of families that otherwise were moving out of the district. Because I was confronting a real trend out of the district where families that could put together the money were doing anything to pay tuition to get their kids out of the district. I think we've changed that considerably. There are a lot more people that are interested in staying in the district, and part of that is family involvement. Whether it's something like the forums that we've set up, the regular forums, we have family forums twice a year, whether it's the monthly meeting with the superintendent, which I get a couple dozen people coming to, whether it's the things in the school buildings, or, the traditional project nights and all that stuff. We've seen a real increase in people coming out to those things. And then with the addition of Shoreline, the Shoreline Academy, as you know, the school within a school project, we get sometimes over 100 parents coming to like a science night. Parents come out for reasons. Sometimes in urban districts you hear people say, oh, parents don't want to come out. Well, like any other parents, they are working hard. They have to prioritize their time, and when it's something really interesting in a school that pertains to their kids, then people come out. So we've seen quite a bit of involvement of families, including at the board meetings. One of the things I started, it's a small thing, but it goes to this issue that you raised of highlighting a student of the month. We didn't have that before. And now at board meetings you get mom and dad and the aunts and that's a good thing, I think, for families to be able to come and get a sense of what the board meetings are like and that sort of thing. So there's been there's been a big increase in family involvement, and I think that's been a good thing for the district, which has increased some level of confidence about what we do in the district. Our biggest employers of parents in the school district are the casinos, the 2 casinos, and Walmart are the top 3, and precisely those jobs require being on the job a lot and at odd hours often. So that is a challenge for us. But we've opened up weekend things. We've opened up all kinds of things that parents can get involved with, ranging from Girl Scouts to clubs that parents get involved with. We've actually had some lessons given. Parents requested that we provide lessons for people in basic computer use, because we had some parents coming to us saying, look, when I go for job interviews, they say, well, do you have some basic computer knowledge? And I say, well, no. And then I'm like off the list. Can you help us out? So we did. So we responded. This is an example of setting up a series of lessons for parents that wanted to come, and we had parents come out, and it was just basic stuff. And then if they wanted to pursue it further, they could go to adult ed and like take a real course. It's hard to say you can directly translate it. What we're seeing is that there's more of a sense of confidence about the schools. One of the things that I confronted first when I came here, and it's hard to now imagine more than 5 years later, but at the time there was a real, as I was saying, there was virtually an exodus of people out of the district. But in addition to that, there was just a cloud of kind of negativity over the district about, that it just was not functional. And there were people, sometimes people in leadership positions in town saying, why don't you just shut down the district? literally. And there were people that were saying that, shut down the high school, send all the kids to Waterford High School. People would say things like that. Of course, that would not be legal, by the way. That detail was left out. But in any event, people were saying it, right? People were saying to me when I first got here, and there were a lot of people that came to this office and said, do not build a science and technology magnet school. It's too expensive, even though the state paid for virtually 100% of it. It's too expensive, and this was the hurtful part, and we don't have any kids that would really benefit from it. There's no New London kids that will benefit from it. People would say that with a straight face. So that was the level of negativity that I was facing, and I think we've really turned the corner on that, partly through parent involvement, and partly through other things like providing some level of stability in how we offer curriculum, having a standardized curriculum in literacy. It might sound like a small thing, but in the absence of it, you get sort of a mixed message, and kids would literally go from one school to another, a lot of mobility in an urban district, right? And in the other school they'd go to in this small little town, there'd be a whole new book and a whole new philosophy of how to learn how to read. Well, if you're 6, that's difficult to follow, right? And so those are the kinds of things that we've done in terms of stabilizing the district and putting in a strong foundation, which I think we are going to start to see. We have seen, in terms of longitudinal data, from 3rd to 4th to 5th grade, our CMT scores are going up at the same pace of the state. Now, we're starting in a lower place, but the trajectory is the same. Mm-hmm. And that's really all I can really, that's a basis for hope, I think, that there really is a rate of growth going on.